Hey friends, this is Ari, and in this module, I'm really excited about what I have for you in store today. I'm here with my good friend and brain expert, neuroscience expert, Mr. Mark Waldman. So Mark, I'm going to read you his bio here real quick to tell you a little bit about him. Mark is an internationally recognized business and personal development NeuroCoach. He's authored 14 books, including the national bestseller, How God Changes Your Brain, which Oprah selected as one of the 9 must-read books for 2012. He's considered one of the world's leading experts on consciousness, communication, spirituality, and the brain. And he's on the Executive MBA faculty at Loyola Marymount University and teaches at Holmes Institute. His research has been published in journals throughout the world, and his work has been featured in Time Magazine, The Washington Post, The New York Times, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Oprah Magazine. He's appeared on hundreds of radio and television programs, including PBS and NPR, and his TED Talk has been viewed by more than 100,000 people. He received the Distinguished Speaker Award from the Mind Science Foundation. His new book, co-authored with Andy Newberg, is called How Enlightenment Changes Your Brain. Great book, by the way. I'm almost finished reading it right now, and it's awesome. I'm loving it. And his brain training program, Neuro Wisdom 101, is now used in schools and businesses throughout the world to help people build mindfulness, communication, and positivity skills. So, Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on this program.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm really excited about this. So a little personal note here. Mark is actually a friend of mine, and we've had a lot of discussions over many years now, and I just love this guy. I'm a student of his work. I follow it myself. I implement it, and it's dramatically improved my own life. So this is really an opportunity for me to share someone that I really admire and learn from myself in my own life with all of you. And, I didn't want to try and teach this stuff myself. I wanted you guys to get it all straight from the source, the man who really knows what he's talking about. So with that said, basically, Mark, his expertise ranges from in the realm of neuroscience, from spirituality to interpersonal communication to business success to lowering your stress levels and your anxiety levels. And really, for our purposes here, I wanted to focus more on addressing emotional management, anxiety management, stress management, and how that relates to energy management, because it's such a critical component of maintaining optimal vitality and energy levels, is to learn how to control your stress levels and your emotional state and to optimize your brain health. So with that said, Mark, do you have any thoughts on that, or should we get straight into the questions here?
Well, the one thing I want to clarify is the use of the word energy. And as you know, each different field of science has a different definition of energy. And a lot of people think about energy, really, they're not aware of it. They're not thinking about it as a scientific term. They're thinking about it as a metaphysical term.
Right.
Like all energy, the energy of the universe, whatever else. Or I really feel energized. I'm really jazzed up and psyched up. But what does that actually mean when it comes to studying the brain? And this is where it becomes really difficult, because the word energy only has one specific meaning as far as brain science is concerned, which is metabolic energy.
Yeah.
How much activity is going on in your brain? And you realize that you have something like 80 some odd billion neurons, and they're not just pieces of machinery or wires. Each one is a living organism. It could send out tentacles from the end of the neuron, the axons. It can have like 10,000 receptors at the other end. And you can actually watch these neurons in vivo. They actually move around, they connect with each other as we form new thoughts. They sometimes disconnect when we don't need that particular information. And a tremendous amount of energy is involved with that, how that neuron collects information, how it stores information. And most of this is speculative, almost on a level of science fiction, but we're beginning to get some pretty cool ideas, and we can actually see pictures of how these neurons connect as we form different thoughts, how positive memories are formed, how negative memories are formed. And in this particular sense of energy, I look at energy as being how much metabolic blood flow do you need in order to focus properly on achieving a particular goal or task? And what happens? Can you burn out your energy circuits? Can you become stressed out? So stress is a form of too much mental activity going on, too much mental energy going on that causes neurological fatigue, psychological fatigue. And if you don't manage that stress in the right way, you'll actually fry these neurons. They actually will drop dead. Yes, you have 80 billion of them, but sometimes a little tiny area of brain death is enough to give you the whole symptom of a stroke, and you just lose something incredibly important. So I'd love to share with you some of the simplest ways that we've discovered to both raise your energy levels, lower your energy levels, manage your stress levels, create more productivity. And because I teach these strategies in the Executive MBA program, which are corporate executives running multi-million-dollar companies, I can't ask them to say, sit there and do a meditation for 20 or 40 minutes until you feel that sense of bliss. They're lucky if they're going to give me 2 minutes. So over the past 6 years, we've developed about 50 or 60 mindfulness-based strategies and brain-based exercises. And we can tell a person, do this for 20 seconds. Each time you feel a little tired, a little burnt out, a little exhausted, take 1 minute at the end of the hour and do A, B, C, and D. Your stress levels will go down, your work productivity will go up. So how would you like to guide me through this educational experience?
Yeah, well, that was an awesome introduction, and I love how you explained the link between stress and fatigue. And just a little side note from my own personal life. I'm pretty dialed in when it comes to most lifestyle habits, nutrition, exercise, sleep, circadian rhythm, and every aspect of lifestyle. But one thing that's a killer for me and for my energy levels is stress. If I'm under a ton of stress, it can almost sabotage everything else. Even if you're doing everything right in every other aspect of your lifestyle, if you're under a ton of stress, it kind of just kills everything. And so it's such a big factor in this. And, so with that said, based on your neuroscience research and your brain scan studies, what do you think is the fastest way to eliminate mental stress?
The fastest way to eliminate mental stress made us notorious when we came out with our book, How God Changes Your Brain. And I remember I was invited onto the Tavis Smiley television program, and he looked at me and said, Mark, all I needed to do was to yawn a bunch of times, and I would have aced all of my studies in class. And the answer is yes. We actually set up an experiment at Pierce College out here in Southern California, and we had a bunch of students do 3 minutes of yawning before taking a test, because many people have test anxiety, and a bunch of people just sat there and did nothing. And we found out that if you do nothing for 3 minutes, or you do yawning for 3 minutes, these students went from a C to a B and a B to an A. And if they didn't take that break to just be quiet for a moment or to do active yawning, their grades would not change. So we went back and forth doing it. It was really an amazing study. So we now have about 42 documented studies showing that yawning is the fastest way to eliminate neurological stress. So here we're looking at stress as there's so much energy, so much metabolic energy going on. You're doing so much thinking, which is just taking place up here in your frontal lobes. Let's say I was going to take this object here and I was going to try to balance it on my hand. The amount of focus and mental concentration that I need, and how I have to learn how to get feedback from my motor cortex, to my frontal lobes, to my visual cortex, to get this to balance. Any of you who have done a particular performance activity like this will know that if you're a beginner in the beginning, in 5 or 10 minutes, you can just feel exhausted. And then when you feel exhausted, you start getting cranky, irritable, anxiety. You can't focus as well. So here's what we found out, and we found it out because it's something that every mammal and many other living organisms do, and birds will do as well. when they're under mental stress. They simply yawn. So
Wow.
what I want you to do, because as you know, Ari, and as most of the people who have followed me know, I'll always answer a question with a question and then give you an experience so that you have a sense of what I'm talking about. I don't want you to come away from this brief webinar with a bunch of more intellectual information. That's just more mental stress. So here's what I'd like you to do, Ari, and everyone who's watching this to do it with me. I want you to yawn just 3 times, but I don't want you just to do a regular yawn, which doesn't involve much consciousness. I want you to do a mindful yawn, meaning I want you to pay close attention to what happens when you yawn. Now, if you don't feel like yawning, you can fake one by just taking a breath in and then going as you exhale. And because yawning is contagious, and since Ari and I are going to be yawning together, you're going to find that this is going to neurologically trigger a yawn in you. And the same thing happens with packs of wild animals. One animal will yawn, the other animals will begin to yawn in unison. And this is actually a way where all of the brains in the community are beginning to align themselves with each other. And they're aligning themselves because they're turning off all the noisy, thinking, stressful activity that's going on in your mind right now. So let's begin. And as you yawn, and then stop for a moment and just pay attention. Just notice if you notice any change in your mental clarity or awareness, if your mood has changed at all. And if you don't notice anything, that's fine, because now I want you to do a second mindful yawn. Ready? Begin. And keep yawning. Let's do about 5 or 6 of these. And all I'm asking you to do is, after you've yawned, bring your attention to pay attention to what is changing in your awareness, in your mind, and your emotions. All right. Now, just be still for a moment and just observe without judgment, paying attention. Ari, how would you describe your change in consciousness or mood?
There's always this sort of baseline level of anxiety that I have. And then, you get in front of a camera, you're recording live. And so you have, an extra layer of anxiety on top of it. And for me, it's like hitting the reset button. You hit the reset button and then you just kind of go back down to the low level of anxiety, and all these little layers that get built up kind of disappear, and you kind of just reset back to a calmer, lower stress state.
So those are all vague words. Let me make it more materialistic, more specific. Were you having more or less thoughts?
Less.
Okay, and so everyone who's watching this, take a moment too. Now, you may find that you can't stop yawning, because one of the things yawning does is that it actually makes you aware of how much mental and physical stress you're walking around with. So anytime during this presentation, if you feel the desire to yawn, keep doing so, because this is your brain's way of telling you you've been really overstressed. And some people can't stop yawning for about 20 minutes. Anxiety, from a neurological perspective, is racing thoughts, endless thoughts. What if this? I need to get that done. What's going to happen if I don't get this done? Oh, I don't have everything organized. Oh, I'm running out of time. Oh, I'm really excited. It doesn't matter what the thoughts are. But the more they start speeding, that is what is the experience of mental anxiety. Too many thoughts going. So what yawning does is that it lowers the blood flow metabolism. It's lowering the energy in your brain, particularly in your frontal lobes. Your brain is becoming less active, less thoughts, less anxiety. The other thing that it'll do, if you ever want to take another yawn, notice that it brings you into the present moment. Now that you don't have all this busy thoughts that you're paying attention to, if you yawn and you're just still, I'm hearing my dog snoring here in the background over here. There's my phone chirping over here. And as long as you don't turn back on your thinking mechanisms, you can begin to take all of these sounds, the fan, the background noises, whatever, and it becomes like a symphony. And this is called mindfulness. This is called being mindfully aware of being in the present moment. Just taking 60 seconds to yawn and to be in the present moment and to notice that your thoughts have quieted down and that your mood may have become a little more calmer. That's all you have to do once or twice an hour to eliminate anxiety for the next 20, 30, 40 minutes of work. So we ask all of our students, all of our managers, when I go into corporate environments and we do these training programs, to download a mindfulness clock onto your computer or your cell phone. Set it to go off 3 times an hour. First 20 minutes, and you hear that bell sound like this. Just take 6 seconds and do 1 yawn. Next time when you hear that bell sound, do another yawn, or maybe a very slow stretch. And then at the top of the hour, when you hear that 3rd bell, take a moment and just take a break from your work. Do something pleasurable. Do a meditation. Run around the block for 60 seconds. Feel the feeling of washing your hands with cold water and just absorb yourself into all of these sensations. These 60-second mindfulness breaks once an hour, if you do that throughout the entire day, it will have a greater effect than if you were an experienced meditator doing 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, because you've just learned how to integrate a calm, relaxed, focused, neutral framework into your busy workday.
Say that again, because it's so important that I want that to sink in with people. Do the comparison again with the experienced meditator. I just want this to sink in. Say it one more time.
Many people have been taught to do 20 minutes or 40 minutes of meditation. And so you sit there for 20 minutes. Maybe you're going om, 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 om. Maybe you're just watching your breathing. And it's very annoying. It takes a long time. And like I said, if you have a busy day, there's always going to be something going on in the back. So we have found that it's actually faster to teach somebody how to become an advanced meditator if we only ask you to do 1 mindful breath a day. That's a commitment that was created by one of the leaders of Google, who wrote a book called Search Inside of Yourself. Just make a commitment to do 1 mindful breath per day. It takes about 6 seconds to just breathe in, notice the sensations through your nose, and breathe out. Just that little tiny pause brings you back into the present moment. Stress levels can be measured. We can see that the metabolic flow and energy has gone down. Less mental stress. Less mental stress, you are now capable, when you throw yourself back into doing a task or a goal, you'll have more energy, you'll have more focus, you'll be able to concentrate better. Stress levels go down, work performance goes up, but in 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, you're going to get stressed out again up here. That's why we're saying, see if you can use a mindfulness clock to just train yourself 2 or 3 times an hour. Something that is relaxing, something that is centering, something that eliminates mental stress, to eliminate physical stress, do anything that's pleasurable for 1 minute each hour. Stress levels go down, work productivity goes up. We've been doing this experiment and this exercise with our Executive MBA students for 8 years now. And we simply have them do these simple 60-second strategies, and we ask them, did that affect your workday? 80 to 95% every year says stress levels went down, work productivity goes up. Thank you, Mark. I'm going to use this for the rest of my life because I'm making more money.
Awesome. I love it. So, so that's mental stress, right?
Yes.
So there's a distinction between mental stress.
Yeah, we've taken care of this part.
Okay. So mental stress versus physical stress. So the mind body, basically.
Right.
So mental stress, yawning, single most powerful, single fastest way to eliminate mental stress.
Best we can find so far from the research.
Cool. So what about physical stress? Is there a difference between them, and is there a more powerful way or a faster way to eliminate physical stress?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. You know what my answer is about to be, but before you knew what my answer was going to be, since you are one of the world's leading experts in physical conditioning and everything else, what would you have in the past recommended? What's the fastest way to eliminate physical tension, muscle aches, and pains?
Well, I make a distinction between two kinds of movement. So there's movement that is like intense exercise movement designed to generate, sort of a metabolic stress and generate, adaptations. And then there's something that I call gentle rejuvenative movement or regenerative movement. And, that includes things like walking, things like stretching, things like yoga, especially movement that incorporates mindfulness or breathing into it.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate with you right now, because I've had chronic back pain and neck pain for about 10 or 15 years. So even if I do a treadmill or a walk that's longer than 15 minutes, I can be in a lot of pain.
Okay.
In my body for the rest of the day, and I've been practicing mindfulness for 35 years. So that hasn't worked for me for that long.
Okay.
So it caused me a lot of pain. So let's just say, well, all right, I've got a lot of neck stress and tension right now, Ari. What's the fastest way for me to get rid of that?
That's a good question. So, I mean, the way I would explain it, don't want to digress too much here, but the way I would explain it is everyone has a different threshold where movement becomes a stressor or becomes regenerative. Mm-hmm. So, some people may have to go even more gentle, even shorter, even less intense in terms of the type of physical activity to make it more rejuvenative, to the point where it might just be gentle stretching.
So I'm going to be that CEO of this busy company, and they're going to say, I don't want all the words, Ari. Tell me in 20 words or whatever else. What should I do to get rid of this neck pain right now?
Just roll your neck around, do a little neck stretching.
Like that?
Yeah, that's pretty good. It could be better, but
here's what the neuroscience shows.
Okay.
I've just caused more physical stress and pain in my neck. Yeah. So this is why the second technique has really moved to the whole front of one of the things that we're trying to teach the entire world about. The yawning is the fastest way to do this. But here's what I want you to do and what I want all of our viewers to do. If I ask you to slowly just do one rotation of your neck, okay, how long would you normally do that slow rotation? Everyone at home, see how long. How many seconds do you spend rolling your head? All right, so everyone, do that like that. That's about 4 seconds, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's what I want you to do now. I'm going to give you the experience first, and I think you'll understand what happens. I want you to do just one single rotation of your head, but I want you to take a full 60 seconds doing so. You're doing it so slow. It's only this super slow motion that allows you to become aware of those little tiny aches and pains. The slower you do anything, the more aware you become. It is that awareness that allows your brain to send a relaxation signal to your muscle. So how did that feel, Ari?
Significantly different, definitely. Much more relaxing. So you're saying, beyond the distinction that I made between more intense and less intense movement, there's this other distinction of
Correct.
The slowness and the degree of mindfulness that you incorporate into it.
The slower you move, so if you do the super slow twist, you'll feel more aches and pains and perhaps more pleasure than if you do it fast. Awareness is the slowest part of our brain. What we are conscious of up here is a very slow moving process, but we do too many things too fast. Now, if you think this is kind of odd and silly or whatever else, some people say, what do you mean? You want me to go around all day, Mark, doing super slow stretches and a bunch of yawns or whatever else? I'm going to ask you a question. All of you who have dogs and cats or have watched animals in nature or birds, what's the very first thing they all do the moment they wake up?
Downward dog.
Yeah, they're going to do, and do they do it fast?
No, they
I mean, they'll go into it. And when they're doing this kind of stretch, if you do this kind of stretch very slowly, they're never pushing themselves into their pain. They're pushing themselves into the pleasure that can be experienced right prior to the pain. So Feldenkrais came up with this type of discovery way back in the 1970s, and we now have brain studies to show that this really works. The slower you do something, the more you explore and observe the painful stretches in your body and the pleasurable sensations as well. If you were to roll your head now, it's been a couple of minutes since that, you're going to feel hardly any of the aches and pains that you felt 5 minutes ago. And this kind of relaxation in your neck will be there 20 minutes from now. So imagine that. A single mindful yawn is enough to reduce neurological stress and tension. Still too fast, Ari.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm getting back into interview mode, so that
right.
I realized I was going too fast, but yeah, it's hard when I'm trying to be a good interviewer and do your exercises at the same time and multitasking.
Right, and if you spend too much time in this deeply mindful state, what happens is that you'll start tapping into the creative centers of your brain. Your mind will start to wander. You'll begin to see almost like a daydreaming kind of scenario unfolding. And in school, we were always told, don't do that, stay concentrated. But it is that mind-wandering, daydreaming state where your brain is creatively solving problems in its own way, much deeper, different than the way we analytically solve problems up here. So this is called brain-based experiential learning, and this is part of our model that we teach in our MBA program. We want you to, when you're in school, when you're studying, when you're learning something new, whether it's in sports, whether it's in education, if you're a therapist, how do you stay in the present moment with no physical or mental or stress? Yes, just take a moment. We teach this to neurosurgeons before going into the operating room. We'll have them yawn a few times. We'll have them do a very super slow stretch. They come into the present moment. We have them do a few other things to upgrade their sense of awareness and positivity, and then they can go through that 10-hour surgery with far less stress and anxiety. And sometimes they'll even do it during it. And so we've started several pilot programs at hospitals to improve how oncologists and how doctors deal in very stressful situations. And you keep yourself mentally aware and awake, mentally less stressed out, physically relaxed, and now there is more of your mind and brain and consciousness and awareness to accomplish any goal that you want or solve problems far more effectively.
Beautiful. I love it. So is the Neckroll the main type of super slow stretch that you would recommend doing to eliminate physical stretch, or is there other stretches? Is it any stretch?
We encourage creativity and to use your intuition so you can experiment around with any kind of movement. The brain loves it whenever you do something that's new and different. So don't get into the habit of doing the same kind of mental activity, physical activity, or spiritual activity in the same way. If you keep repeating the same mantra over and over and over again, brain gets bored with it, ignores it, and you end up getting very little. You see hardly any changes going on in the brain at all. Anytime you do something new, something that's a different kind of stretch than you've ever stretched before. And this is how I got rid of 15 years of chronic pain. I would simply begin to explore moving my back around, and as I felt, when I found that place of pain, now I would yawn. I'd just become aware of it. I'd explore. I would allow that pain to be there, and I would notice that the next time I moved into that position, the pain would be gone. Where'd it go?
Yeah.
And so over about a 3-month period of time, I've been able to keep myself rather pain-free by mindfully exploring my body's movement. And I think what's happening is that I'm beginning to learn. I'm probably moving my body unconsciously throughout the day in ways that are very stressful and are causing pain to be there. So that's why mindfulness has become such an important strategy in psychotherapy, in physical therapy, in dealing with past traumas, in improving mood, happiness, well-being, and increasing work productivity. And mindfulness simply means allowing myself to be aware of what's happening in the present moment, whether it's my thoughts, my feelings, the physical sensations in my body, or even being aware. This is what we call social mindfulness. I can begin to watch your face as I speak. I can allow myself to take in all of your facial expressions, and then when you are talking, if I intuitively allow myself to listen to all the subtleties in the tone of your voice and all the richness in the facial expressions, this is where my brain will actually begin to attune itself, to neurologically resonate to the activity in your brain.
Wow.
That form of neural resonance is what we call empathy. That's how I actually get a semblance of how you are thinking and feeling. It's not through the words.
Wow. Awesome. So we've covered from here up, and we've covered from here down.
On a physical level.
What's that?
And on a physical level. So just one mindful yawn, one mindful stretch. At least just do 1 an hour if you can. But if you can't even do that, how about just 1 a day? We're saying start out as little as possible, and you're going to feel a sense of pleasure, mental pleasure and physical pleasure. And that will motivate your brain to do more of it, because your brain is basically a pain-pleasure mechanism. It wants to have as much pleasure as possible and will move the organism, your body, you, towards that object of pleasure and away from anything that's painful.
Beautiful. So how often, at least 1 time a day, is there a best time of day or a certain frequency?
No, that's why I'm saying try putting a mindfulness clock onto your computer or cell phone. That's free. Start out setting it to ring 3 times an hour. If it drives you nuts, set it to ring twice an hour. If it still drives you nuts, set it to ring once an hour. It'll go off and you'll hear that bell in the background. And you'll be working busily and you're going to say, I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen. Okay, I'm going to give it a try, whatever else. All right. And what you'll find is that if you actually take a full 60 seconds, I mean, you can even run in place. You can do anything that's pleasurable. You can even stroke your palms of your hands for 60 seconds. That sense of pleasure immediately gets rid of all of this mental stress. And the pleasure releases dopamine from your nucleus accumbens. It actually moves into your frontal lobe consciousness. It makes you more awake, more aware, and more desirous to do any of the things that you're doing, even if the things that you're doing feels crummy. So now the yawning and the stretching and the mindfulness bell and all these simple 60-second meditations become your reward. Great, I'm going to really work my butt off over this next half hour to an hour, and I'm going to reward myself with something really pleasurable that only takes 10 to 60 seconds to do, and that's how we can get an entire corporation to do that.
Nice. I dig it. Yeah, everything in our modern world has got to be fast-paced, 60 seconds or less, otherwise nobody has time for it, right?
Yes.
So
But we don't. But I'm saying we can do that. So the old notion was, no, you have to go off and live in a cave for 10 years if you're going to learn how to become enlightened.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to learn how to be a cave for. You can become enlightened for 10 seconds once an hour. That's good enough.
I love it. So so we talked about mental stress and physical stress. What about anxiety? How does anxiety fit into this picture? Is it different than from mental stress and physical stress? Because I know, if I'm anxious, I feel it's very much intertwined with mental stress. It also feels intertwined with physical stress. I know my breathing gets shallower. I'll start to hold tension in certain parts of my body. So how does anxiety specifically fit into all of this? And is there a better way to deal with anxiety specifically, or is it the same thing as the last couple things we talked about?
I'm going to teach you and everyone the fastest way to eliminate mental anxiety. Okay? But this is going to require both you and I to lift up your hands like this.
Okay.
Like this. When you run out of fingers, you must stop talking.
Okay. That's one word. Okay. I get it.
Now, tell me in 10 words, what is anxiety?
Well, you explained this earlier. I'm going to run out of words.
But then you just stop and let me talk.
Okay. Perfect. Excessive mental chatter would be my definition.
That is the best neurological definition of anxiety I've heard in years. This is called the 10-10 game.
Yeah.
But in business meetings, if you insist upon a 20-word, 20-second rule, you'll solve problems remarkably.
Why is that?
When you are doing this, what change happens in your mind?
You slow down and become mindful of what you're saying.
Thought processes are extraordinarily fast and endless. Consciousness, however, can only hold 4 to 7 chunks of information in your mind.
Aha. So how does that relate to anxiety? How does that figure into?
This strategy originally grew out of how to improve effective communication. And what we discovered is that in communication, the other person's mind is only going to be able to grasp about 4 or 7 of your words. And then it does all kinds of things non-consciously. If we try to put words to our thought processes, we ourselves will get lost in an endless jumble that's going on. It's one of the least effective ways to think, but nobody's ever taught anybody how to think until the last few years. So again, we're applying mindfulness to the communication process. What is the experience of a single sentence? Because you've reduced the number of words, not only have you increased listener comprehension, but you've forced yourself not to have all this internal chatter going on all the time. That is what mental anxiety is. And here's an interesting thing we've discovered about thought process anxiety, okay? This side of your prefrontal cortex, this little area over here, tends to be kind of a pessimist. It's a worrywart. Well, what if this, I'm running out of time and this could go wrong. It's kind of sitting there just worrying and fretting and having doubts about everything. This side is the optimist. almost an impulsive thing. Oh, I can do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to jump in there, whatever else. And so you can imagine what happens, for example, if you're trying to lose weight, and here you are, you're sitting in front of a great big bowl of ice cream. This side is going, yes, that is pleasure. And all the memories are going, yes, that is pleasure. More, 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 more. And this side is going, you're going to add 500 pounds to you if you eat that, whatever else. This is bad for you. You're pre-diabetic. You're going to die. But I want the pleasure. I want the pleasure. No, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. So this is what's normally going on.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're not aware that there's this positive and negative chatter going on all the time. So again, we have to mindfully learn how to listen to our thought processes. This is all the anxiety side over here. But there's another form of anxiety. If you try to listen to everything, you're just going to feel overwhelmed. So it is true. You have 5 minutes left, and you know you have 20 minutes of work that has to get done. You can't complete your task. So you know you're going to fail. The failure creates a sense of disappointment. You're going to have to learn how to interrupt even realistic negative thinking. You have to create what's called a positivity ratio. You have to be able to generate 5 positive thoughts for every negative thought or feeling you have, or you're going to end up being chronically depressed.
How do you do that?
First, you've got to slow your thinking process down.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not talking to somebody, pick up a pen and write it down. Make sure that sit there and actually you can make a list, a mindful list of what all of your thoughts. So the formal practice of mindfulness was again and we added the yawning and stretching because you can get into a meditation or a mindfulness state much faster if you have no mental or physical stress. Mm-hmm. So you take a moment, yawn, stretch, relax. Now, watch how your thoughts emerge or your feelings. Just sit there and observe, and you'll see this particular thought will come up. If I was to do this right now, I'm feeling my breath, I'm hearing the fan. I'm wondering, am I spending too much time, and is this interview going too long? Coming back to my breath. Gee, I think this is a good interview. Well, there I am judging that again. Let that go. There's my breathing again. And so we're slowly teaching ourselves that we can watch our thoughts. That also slows down the thought process. What happens is that because we're so used to, oh, I've been a worrier all my life, so I'm constantly fretting, and how am I going to get this book done? And it becomes a habit. So the more you do any kind of positive or negative mental activity or positive or negative behavior, I mean, if I'm just habitually always overeating, I have created in the deeper part of my learning center of my brain an automatic behavior. So we train our brains to form habits and behaviors, and they can be good or they can be bad. And they operate outside of consciousness. Now, if we want to change a bad behavior, we're going to have to watch that behavior. So again, we have to slow everything down. See how I'm saying slowness, super slowness is the key to everything. We're going to watch and observe without judgment. So the fastest way to interrupt anxiety is to actually increase pleasure. And this is where we come up with the third thing that most mammals and birds will do after they've yawned and stretched. They're going to do something else as well. They're going to start to preen themselves.
Yeah.
What are they doing in that? Well, actually, they're lowering anxiety levels. So, dogs, for example, have all kinds of tics and OCD behaviors that are just like human beings, and they're doing that to soothe themselves. It's self-soothing. They're self-medicating through pleasure. And so we found, if you take a few minutes, try it right now, begin to slowly explore the feelings on your fingertips. And then explore the sides of your fingers. Again, remember, the slower you go, the more you're going to feel. So nobody brings in that important part that if the slower you go, the more you feel. And you can't go too slow. See what it's like. See how absolutely slow you can go, stroking just one finger. And the slower you go, the more you'll discover. Then, if you stroke the palms of your hand, find different ways of squeezing, touching, stroking your hands, your fingers, even your face. And you'll notice that when you find an area and a way of creating self-pleasurable stimulation, notice that you're having no thoughts going on at all, and you're certainly having absolutely no anxiety-driven thoughts.
Yeah.
So again, the brain is pain-pleasure. Anxiety is unpleasant. So if you're feeling anxious, slow down, yawn, stretch, do something pleasurable. People with traumatic experiences, people who have gone through cancer, sometimes they have difficulty falling asleep at night. They're actually afraid that they'll wake up dead, which I don't think actually happens from a neuroscientific perspective. But we ask them to give themselves a self-massage before going to bed. And many people will say, that's the best night's sleep I've ever had.
Wow.
So we're looking for these little simple things that you can add to whatever ritual you have, whatever regimen you have, whatever lifestyle that you have. Just add some yawning, stretching, 60 seconds of pleasure once each hour. That eliminates
awesome.
anxiety.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, they're such simple little things. You would think that, oh, that can't possibly be powerful. Yawning, a little stretch here and there, or rubbing my fingers or something like that. And yet what you're saying is these simple actions are, the most powerful way to eliminate mental stress, to eliminate physical stress, to interrupt anxiety. I mean, this is really, really good stuff. I love it. So
one more thing I want to add to this, though. There's another form of anxiety, which is caused by the fact that we tend to believe our thoughts. In other words, we're worried that, I'm worried I'm going to lose all of my money. Maybe the stock market will fail again. Many people after 2008 who made millions of dollars lost it all. They were high rollers. They put all their money in houses that collapsed and everything else. And they never find the motivation again to jump back into work that they used to love doing, because in the back of their mind, there's the thought, well, it happened once before, it's going to happen again. Well, statistically speaking, that's true. But if you believe that thought, and we're always projecting thoughts about what's going to happen in the future, if you believe in that, you could run into trouble if you're believing in your negative thoughts. So mental anxiety requires mindfulness training on how to begin to watch those anxious thoughts, how to interrupt them, how to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts, how to increase that positivity ratio, and how to usually, I'm a NeuroCoach, so I work with people internationally. When you really get stuck, I'll guide you through these strategies in this way. I'll keep you in this very deeply relaxed state, and then we'll go into that crazy mind of yours. We'll explore how those thinkings are, where those fears and fantasies are. And then I just ask you to ask your intuition. One, is this really happening in the present moment? The answer is almost always no. Do you really believe this is true? And sometimes it's the first time a person says, oh, I'm reliving my past and I have forgotten it's part of the past. So we're still using these very simple strategies to bring them into and modify and change traditional psychotherapy so that neurocoaching can solve virtually anybody's problem in about 3 sessions.
Yeah, that's a pretty big contrast to traditional psychoanalysis, I'd say.
Yes, because you're being taught what to do with your thoughts and feelings when you walk out of the therapy room.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. So let's get into my personal favorite of all the stuff I've learned from you, which is, what is the fastest way to eliminate negativity?
Meditate on your crap.
All right, so explain what that means. I know what you mean, but explain to everybody else what that means.
One time I was invited out to Texas to give literally something like 12 to 16 talks and workshops in like 4 days. I mean, I didn't even know what town I was in. It was so fast or whatever else. It was incredibly successful. It was a wonderful experience. And I got back onto the airplane to fly back home, and I found myself feeling depressed. Like these thoughts were going, why bother? My life is worthless. I'm going, Jesus Christ, after 15 years of psychoanalysis, 5 years of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, everything else, here I am right back. And this is about 10 years ago. And I've said, this is unbelievable to me. I took out a sheet of paper and I just decided to write down all of my crappy thoughts. I wrote down all of and I use crap as, I don't know what the word, stands for: conflicts, resistances, anxieties, any problem that you have. And I made a list of all those things. I'm no good. I don't make enough money. I'm not attractive enough. It's all going to fall apart. I have this health problem. I put it all on a sheet of paper. And I was too tired then. I had all of this crap written down here on my sheet of paper here. I just sat there and I decided I'm just going to yawn and stretch and mindfully look at all of the things I wrote down. And if you do this, if you create a crap board, what we've found out since that time is that the brain, when you take all of the things you're worried about and put it down on a piece of paper, your brain's kind of funny. When it has stuff that it worries about, it doesn't want to forget about what it's going to worry about, because if you push it out of your mind, then you're going to make a mistake. You're going to forget to do this or this or this. If you put it down on the piece of paper, this becomes like a second hard drive, and your brain knows that all your problems are on that sheet of paper. You're now free to go back to work. Once you put them all down on your sheet of paper, I don't want you to immerse yourself in the things on the list. I want you to, again, look at the list, yawn and stretch, relax, and just observe them. You look at the words. And the more you look at the words on that piece of paper, the more they lose their meaning. So here's where we're using repetition. And you begin to see that they're just words on a piece of paper. And suddenly, on the plane, all of my stress and anxiety fell away. And I found myself literally in a state of bliss that lasted for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we started to do some experiments. And now there's about 25,000 people through Facebook who have done the crap board. And it is by far everybody's most favorite exercise in the world. So you take your crap board, you don't want to throw it away, because the moment, and this is actually my list of all the things I have to get done today. If I throw it away, my mind's going to go crazy. Am I going to forget something? So this is time management, and you can manage your anxiety and your crap and your negativity in the same way. Make a list of all your creativity. Now, when you're looking at something that's negative, let's pick something that's really true for me. I have 3 medical problems going on with one of my eyes. I could lose my eye vision and everything else. This drove me nuts for a good year. I mean, it almost, it started affecting my work and business and everything else. Finally, I had enough, and I put down all my worries about my eye on a piece of paper. And then I would do something very interesting. I would begin to do something pleasurable while I looked at something terrible happening. This is causing neural dissonance. How can I feel pleasure about losing my eyeball? Well, what it does, it just interrupts a chronic negativity. So many of us are negative and we're not aware that we're being negative. So by having it on a sheet of paper and by doing any of these relaxation or mindfulness exercises, you'll begin to see your negativity in a new way. There'll be distance between your mind and the thoughts that are on the paper. And the most beautiful thing about sitting there and watching your thoughts, whether they be positive or negative, is that the more you watch your thoughts, the more you begin to become aware that you are not your thoughts. And that's a mind-blowing experience. Oh, no, my brain is thinking. I am not my thoughts, because I, which is actually takes place back here in your parietal lobe, is literally watching your thoughts.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what's this I about? Well, that I turns out to be very calm most of the time. It's what some people call the observing self. So, of course, I'm curious. So I'll start to watch my eye. Oh, really? Well, who is this observing self? Sitting there watching it, kind of like my own, I visualize a little inner guru sitting there. oh, well, wait a minute. Who's this person that's watching my guru? Suddenly, whole brain collapses. This is where cognitive functioning gets overwhelmed. This part, our awareness, this limited view of consciousness, does not see the world as clearly as we think it does. And so when you get into some of these more deeper meditation practices that we've been doing brain scan studies on, when you're doing chanting and heavy breathing and channeling and all the wonderful things that are in our that we put into our last book, something very interesting happens. Frontal lobe activity again drops. Your ability to think gets turned off. You can turn off your thinking and still have awareness. Now, this is amazing. And yes, we've mapped out 6 different levels of human consciousness or awareness that we have. You can learn how to keep shifting yourself back and forth. A relaxed state of awareness is different than a concentrated form of task-oriented, goal-centered activity. But that's different from just being creative and mind-wandering and having fun. And so we begin to realize that our brain has many discrete levels of functioning. Can we become aware of them and then learn how to manipulate and move them through? Yes. So that's what all of our experiential exercises and workshops are about. How to train a person to become aware of negative thinking, how to become aware of positive thinking, how to manipulate those negative thoughts, how to turn down activity in that side of the brain, how to increase the optimism centers in this part of the brain, how to tap into your creative aspects of your brain, how to watch them in a way that provide you with insights, aha experiences, beginning to see how you are actually functioning in the world. And we find that when you do those 5 or 6 strategies that I just laid out, life becomes more meaningful, purposeful. It becomes more fun. You're engaged in discovering one basic human fact. We don't have a clue what we're doing on this planet. And when we are aware of that, suddenly we take a much greater interest in what we are doing. We're doing the same old boring job, but we realize we're not even aware of what we're doing. We watch that boring job in this mindful way, and the boring job becomes interesting. And that's how we help people increase their work career, move them out of a financial situation, show them how to take this job that's become repetitious and boring and move into something that's new and exciting. I've written and published 14 books. Right now, it's starting to become a habit. It's losing that excitement. So I'm beginning to say, what can I do instead of that? Where do I go from here? And this is how we are using our brain science to map out the simple strategies of what motivates us, what keeps us optimistic and alive, what helps us achieve the goals we desire. How do we make use of bringing more pleasure into our life, more mindfulness into our life? Can we document it, and can we actually see that more people end up with less stress, more productivity, they're enjoying their lives more, and we give them a battery of tests, and these are the happiest people in the world.
I love it. Yeah. And of course, people who are not stressed out and anxious, who are happy and positive people, that absolutely correlates and corresponds to one's subjective sense of vitality and energy. And
Absolutely.
It's literally, in terms of the hormonal state that those emotions are bringing into your body, it's literally putting your body into a state where your cells are going to work and produce energy better. So I love it, Mark. Thank you so much for this. I know you have to run in a couple minutes. I want to say a couple things really fast. One is on the crap board. That has, just as far as my own personal experience, that has been one of the absolute most powerful things I've ever done. I've studied meditation and mindfulness for years and years, all sorts of esoteric Eastern religious stuff and yoga, and by far, that exercise, which you would think would be the last thing to be the most beneficial, the most powerful thing, that was the most powerful thing I've ever done. And when I did that originally, when I actually sat down to write out all of my conflicts, my resistances, my anxieties, my problems, I was blown away by how much I actually wrote down on that paper.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I needed to flip the paper over and keep writing a list of more and more stuff. And there was such a profound release and a lowering of anxiety for me when I just put it all out on the paper and I could just look at it. And it really, like, I mean, it's not metaphorical. It really takes the stuff out of your brain and puts it somewhere else so that your brain is not constantly wrapped up in those things.
As long as you stay in a deeply relaxed, contemplative, mindful state when you do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, some people will believe that all that crap is real instead of saying, wow, that's a bunch of crap. And sometimes some of the things on the crap board are real problems. So when you identify the 3 or 4 things out of the 50 things you wrote down, then take that piece of serious problem instead of, and turn it into a problem. If it's a problem, your brain is designed to find solutions. Take out a piece of paper and write down 3 possible things you can do to help solve some part of that problem. Write it down, because the writing is, again, essential to stimulate the goal-oriented center, and then chart yourself. By the end of the day, just take a look and reflect on the 3 things you did well that day. If you did that for 7 days, research shows, and this is what put positive psychology on the map, that your self-esteem continues to increase for the next 3 months.
Wow.
Imagine doing that at the end of the day for the next month. Just 3 things you've done well that day that you feel grateful for, that you're positive. And that's another way of training your brain. You've identified your crap. You've used these techniques to neutralize them. You realize that half of the crap on your paper is just a fantasy in the first place. There are some problems. We've solved that. And now we're going to continually reward ourselves by reminding ourselves how successful we've been throughout the day. We have 100 tiny successes, 1,000 tiny successes every day. You and I are successful right now. We're breathing. I'm sitting here. The lighting is good. These are all successes. It's been a great talk. If we savor all of those successes, the few negative things that we have lose their weight. That's that 5-to-1 positivity ratio that I was talking about. And of course, all of these are the exercises that are in the audio program, Neuro Wisdom 101. So I take you through the crap boards, show you how to do it while you're in this deeply relaxed state.
Absolutely. And by the way, the 3 things at the end of the day that went well that day, and just bringing yourself I do it at night, every night before I go to bed, just bringing yourself into that state of gratitude. Absolutely, 100%. I can speak to both me and my girlfriend. It has absolutely changed our brains and rewired us towards positivity and gratitude. And it's actually improved our relationship too, just how that change in how you see the world and being more conscious of appreciating things and being grateful and being positive about things. It has such wide-reaching consequences and side effects.
And this isn't New Age woo. Everything that I've been sharing with you is based upon dozens of studies, and now we even have meta-analytic studies of the studies, on how effective positivity and mindfulness is, and relaxation and awareness can be to transform your life. So these mindfulness-based practices have now turned out to be the most successful ways of dealing with chronic anxiety and chronic depression as well.
I love it. So just to recap super quickly, we covered the most effective way to eliminate mental stress, the most effective way to eliminate physical stress, all based on the neuroscience. We covered the most effective way to interrupt anxiety and increase pleasure. We covered the most powerful way to eliminate negativity, and how to rewire your brain for gratitude and increase your self-esteem.
Yes.
So Mark, I can't thank you enough. This is such amazing content. I literally mean that, because I practice this stuff daily and I've seen the results in my own life. So I love it. Thank you so much for all of this. For everybody watching this who wants to learn more about your work and just learn more about what you do and about all the other stuff, all your other aspects of the research that we didn't talk about today, where can they find out more information about your books and your products?
They can go to markwaldman.com. And for the audio program Neuro Wisdom, you can go to neurowisdom.com. But also, if you go to my webpage, you'll see up in the little corner There's a little gift that I have for you all called 10 mind-blowing discoveries about the human brain, and you'll love this. Number one is that the reality that you think you see has nothing to do with the reality that's actually out there. And this is one of the biggest discoveries that we've made in our neuroscience research. I think you'll love that little ebook, and it's at just go to markrobertwaldman.com, and you can click on that, and you'll get that ebook, and that'll also, you can get weekly neuro tips from me as well. I like to add people to an email list, and I'll send you weekly neuro tips and invite you into Q&A programs and things like we're doing here. So, Ari, thank you so much for having me on your program.
Yeah, my pleasure. And one last thing, for anyone that is dealing with severe depression or anxiety issues, I would also recommend to you to do one-on-one neuro coaching with Mark himself, and just spend the time. You know, he can achieve amazing results in just 2 or 3 sessions. So if that's been a lifelong struggle of yours, if you're just always in stress, anxiety, depression mode, and you are looking for a way out, I would really personally endorse Mark as someone to do that one-on-one coaching with.
Or even if you have a particular problem, you're having a relationship conflict, or you're stuck in procrastination, or you're just feeling like you're not really living your life fullest and really identified with your true meaning and purpose, these usually only take a couple sessions to do, and you can drop me an email to markwaldman@sbcglobal.net, or go to my website, and there's a contact page that you can send me, and I'll send you a brochure and a fascinating intake form that will help you discover yourself. You may not even need me after you do the intake form.
Awesome, Mark. I love it. Thank you so much. Again, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.
As always, it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Ari.
Yeah.